I have got a couple of minutes, so if you want to grab a drink or something, now's the time to do so. Make yourselves nice and comfortable and settle in. I'm going to be here for about an hour or so, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter. We'll see how long it takes to go through the photos that I've got for you today. I'll just go through some editing techniques. Hopefully it will give you some idea, something to go away with. I'm just going to give it a couple of more minutes just to let people join. Apologies for the cancellation today, kind of out of control, really. So yeah, we've got extreme weather warnings here in the southwest, so right the way across Wales and into Bristol and a little bit further inland. Some gale force winds, gusts of between 60 and 70 miles per hour. So I didn't want to encourage anyone to be out on the road in those kind of conditions. So hence why I've cancelled today's workshop, but hopefully we'll get that rescheduled in the new year sometime. And it will be great to get loads of people involved with that. But I think it's best whenever we've got that kind of forecast. I don't want to be encouraging people to travel around. So I thought it was best to cancel it off. So just to reiterate, if you do have any questions or comments or anything like that along the way, you can use the chat feature in either Zoom or YouTube, and I will get to those comments at the end. I will also open up things. For live chat once we've finished the YouTube stream. And as I say, that's just in the interest of everyone's privacy, so that you're not being broadcast live. Right, just got a message from Louise here. Who's in a link? So just getting a couple of messages through from people that are wanting to join and don't have the link or something. So I'm just going to get that to people as well. So bear with me, just bear with me for a couple of minutes. I just want to make sure that people are able to join. Okie dokie. I should get notifications pop up as people jump into the call as well. So I am going to kick things off and start sharing my screen. My microphone is on. Right. So you should all be able to see my screen now. You should all be able to hear me as well. What I'll do is I'll just get someone to pop an OK or a thumbs up emoji or something in the chat feature for me, just so I know that you can all see and hear me all right. Excellent. Perfect. So use that chat feature if you've got any questions along the way, or the comments in YouTube, and I'll come to it at the end. Great stuff. So again, thank you very much for joining me. Apologies for the cancellation for the workshop today, but it's great that we're able to utilize the technology to give you some kind of value from today and the time that we had sort of earmarked out with each other. So I'm just going to go through a few of these photos. We might get through all of them. These are all straight out of camera. So I have edited a couple of these before, and a few of them you may have seen me do, you may not have. My workflow is pretty much the same throughout most of my images. Obviously, some things need a little bit tweaking in other areas, but I pretty much, especially with landscape stuff, I pretty much do the same thing all the way through. What I've selected here is half a dozen or so images that came straight out of camera, which when you immediately look at them, there's nothing really spectacular about them. This one of the lighthouse has already been edited. So this is a JPEG, but it's had a little bit of tweaking already, but the rest of them, as you can see, are all raw files. That is what I shoot in. And that basically means I've got a lot of editing capabilities. So someone might be joining. So we'll just do that and then pop back. Sorry, I just want to make sure that we're all muted and all cameras are off as well. Cool. Okay. So yeah, these are all pretty much straight out of camera. And when shooting in RAW, you've got a lot more editing that you can do, because a RAW file, as you may have heard me say in the Introduction to Photography or Digital Photography presentation, a RAW file saves all the information from the scene, so we can take our editing a lot further than we can with the JPEG file, because JPEGs are compressed, and so it loses quite a lot of the information that the camera or whatever thinks that we don't need. So initially, when you look at these, some of these are really bad. But we wait until we've edited them up, and we can actually bring back quite a lot of detail. So where shall we start? Let's go, well, let's just start at the beginning and work our way through. It's a good place to start as any. So this image was shot a number of years ago in Australia on a beach at kind of midday. So yeah, like quarter to one. The light is very, very flat. It was starting to get a little bit drizzly. And yeah, it's kind of a bit of a boring flat image as it is, but this is actually one of my favorite images after it's been edited up. And the reason I always put this one in there is because I'm a big advocate for just taking as many pictures as you can at any time. So so even when the light is kind of pretty dull, as it is here, even though there's actually quite an interesting cloud cover in the sky, the image is pretty dull, and the light is not as beautiful as we would hope for as landscape photographers. So I am a big advocate of taking photos at any time. And what do we do when the light is flat and boring like this? Well, we can utilize a number of different presets and filters. Black and white is a big one. So before I actually convert this, I'm going to tidy it up a little bit. You can see here, because it was getting a bit drizzly, there are a couple of rain spots on the lens. And we don't really want them. They're very distracting. If we turn this into black and white now, they'll look just as bad. So we're going to go into the editing module. I'm editing everything here today in Lightroom, and all my editing is done on an iPad Pro 12.9 inch for those of you who are interested. But I try and keep my workflow as minimal and as portable as possible, because I am a travel and adventure photographer, so I am constantly on the road. So I don't want to be carrying big bulky equipment with me. I certainly couldn't have a desktop setup. So I am at home in my home office, and I am doing my normal editing flow as I would do if I was on the road. So just wanted to kind of put that out there straight away, just so you all know what equipment I'm using. So this is Lightroom on the iPad. It is very capable. I do have Photoshop as well. I'm not a big fan of Photoshop. The main thing I want to point out is I would much rather spend time out and about with my camera, actually taking the image. That's where the enjoyment is for me, actually shooting the image. I don't want to do lots of post-process editing. I do quite enjoy it at times, but I certainly don't want to be sat in front of a computer doing loads of editing. I'd much rather go out and take images. So I will utilize accessories and things that I have at my disposal so that I can cut down on the amount of editing that I have to do. But I find the iPad Pro works really well for me. I do a lot of online coaching and things like that as well. And yeah, I can use this for everything. So it's great. So this is Lightroom. Up here, we've got the editing module. Now you could go straight away and edit this with an auto feature, and it's, you know, brought in a load of color. This is basic because this is a raw file. This is pretty much like the first step that a lot of people will do, just to develop that raw file, because like I said, raw files, when they come out of the camera straight away, they are pretty dull, pretty flat. They need developing. So we could use that auto feature, and it makes quite a difference. It brings a lot of clarity back, gets rid of a lot of the haze, and it could be a pretty good place to start. I always give that a quick click just to see what it comes up with. In this case, I think I quite like it. It's brought a bit of clarity back into the rocks and the surface. I think I'm going to leave that in place. But like I said, the first thing I really want to do is get rid of these water spots. And we do that using the healing tool, and that's this plaster over here. Now there's two ways you can remove elements or heal, replace elements in your scene. You can use a heal function, or you can use a clone function. Now clone will take an area of the image nearby to the spot that you're going to replace, and try and match it in. So by using this slider here, this is the size. You can see that red dot getting bigger and smaller. So we dictate how big or small we want our brush to be. And we're going to click on this spot right here. And what it's done, it's taken this section here and matched it in to this one and got rid of that water droplet. If it grabbed a part of the image that doesn't quite match, we can drag this around until we find something that actually does match in quite nicely. So, and if we find that we've missed the spot a little bit, double click on this and it removes it, so we can get rid of it. So I'm actually going to make my healing brush a little bit bigger for these water spots because that didn't quite cover everything. And then I'm going to go in and just grab parts that I think match. This one might be a little bit dodgy. Just trying to find kind of what matches in nicely. Just want to clean things up a little bit. All right, now this one back here, this is a little bit tricky. If I zoom into that bit, so that actually works quite nicely because what it's done is it's kind of duplicated this area here and hidden this house. If I didn't have this one, oopsie, let's get rid of all of these. I just want to show you this one in particular. If I didn't have this one, we'd have this misty spot, which is a water spot, and it's actually showing a lot of the house there. But I don't like that spot being in the image at all. So I am going to remove that one because as we look at it from zoomed out, it is really quite obvious. So I don't mind that spot being a little bit, you know, it's not true to the image because those trees aren't there, but it is better than having the water droplet there, in my opinion. So that is, I am going to leave that one there and see what that looks like when we actually finish up all of these healing spots. Just jump into Zoom. It's like someone would like to join. Welcome, thank you for joining us. So how does that look now? This doesn't quite work and the spots are a little bit off in terms of size, but you get the idea. So let's just increase them a little bit, try and do a bit of a better job. All right, that's good enough for now. It gives you an idea anyway. Let's jump into a couple of other edits. What we can do, I should point out actually, what we can do is use the healing brush instead of clone. And what that does is it actually allows us to kind of paint over things a little bit instead. So if we had an element down here, for example, that we didn't actually want to clone, but we wanted to heal it, we could actually brush like that as well, instead of actually just kind of using a stamp tool, if you like, which might serve us better in certain areas. Say up here in the clouds where we've got a little bit of texture, you might want to brush things out instead of actually just kind of clicking and trying to find a circle that matches the particular size. But we're going to do a lot more with healing as we go along, so I might just leave that for now. Cool. Okay. And I don't really like the composition of this too much. I think it needs cropping. So we're going to go into the crop tool here, and this was shot in 4:3, but we can choose any one of these crop sizes here. I'm a big fan of 16:9 for landscape stuff, and what I tend to do is I utilize the rule of thirds quite often in my images. So what I'll do is I'll use these horizontal lines, and I'll choose what I think is more interesting in the scene. Is the sky more interesting, which very often at sunrise or sunset, the sky is the most interesting thing, or is the foreground the most interesting thing? In this case, I think we'd all agree that the foreground and the water coming over these rocks and being blurred out, the texture in the rocks is the most interesting thing. So I'm going to utilize the rule of thirds. I'm going to pop that top horizontal line on the horizon, and give myself 2/3 foreground to 1/3 sky. Now you can see that it's not quite straight. Okay, so I am going to use this little dial down the bottom to make sure that that line goes right the way across the horizon and straightens up my image nicely. It was ever so slightly off. Okay, I'll just put it back to the original. So it's ever so slightly off, but it is noticeable. So I want to make sure that it is straight. It is one of the first things that people will pick up on in landscape photos especially. So nice and straight. There we go. Cool. Now, I did say I'm going to convert it to black and white. I keep going on about it, so I am going to do that. And I have, in Lightroom, you have loads of presets available. So Lightroom will actually analyze the photo and then give you a load of presets to choose from. Some of them are really funky and out there and they don't work at all. You have all these different style ones. Lightroom is a subscription-based app, so this is why you get all of this content, because you're paying for you're paying for it basically. So I'm going to go into black and white, and this is as easy as just going through and having a look to see which preset you particularly like. So we can just go all the way through and see. Now, I think a lot of these are a bit too kind of soft. This is quite nice, but it blows out the highlights a little bit too much. We can edit all of this afterwards. So I'm not going for, this isn't going to be my final result. I'm just going to find something that gives me the bulk of the work, if you like. I quite like the punch, so I'm going to go with that, but there is a little bit that I want to do. So the main thing is I don't like how bright this sky is. Okay, I really want this to be the main attraction of the image, this foreground, but this sky is too bright and the eye will always go to the brightest part of the scene. So if someone looks at this for the first time, the sky is really going to detract from what's going on down here. So I'm going to darken just this portion. Now, this is a really handy tip. There are a number of ways you can do this. We're going to use the mask feature. This is this one here. And we're going to add a new mask by clicking on the plus. Now, the new version of Lightroom actually gives you a select sky feature. Traditionally, what I would do, and as a landscape photographer, I'm kind of used to doing this in the field as well, is to use a linear gradient. And what a linear gradient does is basically I can draw down a line, I can put it on any kind of angle I want as well, but I can draw down a line and set that to the point that I want. And then I can make my edits just within this section that has turned red. All right, and because it's a gradient, they're going to kind of fade out. So they're going to be really strong up here and less strong down here. And I can change that. I can move this down, you know, to make sure that I've got the balance that I want. In the field, I would use an actual piece of glass, which is called a filter. Okay, and it's dark on the top half and bright and clear on the bottom half. And I would actually put that in front of my lens, so that what I would get is the one exposure, the one image. The sky would be a little bit darker than my foreground. So I do that in the field, but you can use this linear gradient to do that in post-process editing. You could use a brush, and what you do is you set the size of the brush you want, along with other parameters like the feather. So that's the edges, just like in the linear gradient. That's how much it's going to kind of taper out towards the edges, if you like. And the flow is, you know, how much of a difference it's actually going to make as you paint that in. So I would always go 100%. And then you just, you know, you brush across the area of the scene that you want to edit. When you've got something like this, that can be more useful than the linear gradient, because the linear gradient has an absolute line to it, and you've got an area of the photo here which is buildings and trees, and that's darker by its own nature than the white clouds. So you don't necessarily want to edit the clouds and this at the same time, which is what that linear gradient will do, because the line comes to here. So you can use the brush and paint in around this area. If you do accidentally go over the edges there, you just grab the eraser and you take out what you don't want, and you just keep going until you get it right. And obviously you can change your brush size and all that kind of thing to make it easier to actually get into the areas of the scene that you want. So you could do it that way as well, and we can even take out this tree. So now we're just editing that portion. That could be a way of doing it. And as I said, you've got this select sky feature. So Lightroom actually does a little bit of detecting. And how good a job has it done? Pretty good. It's missed all of this here. Okay, there's a little bit up the top here that it's got, and it has included that tree as well. And we can tell that because it's all red. So it works pretty well. It's not perfect. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to use the brush. Okay, so I'm going to get my brush size. I'm going to paint in what I want to edit, because I actually want to bring down this white water in the background as well. So I want to edit all of that. I want to edit this bit behind the rocks. I'm going to delete the bit with the buildings. And to do that, I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. I'm just going to get in there. Bring that down a little bit more. Take this out. And go down a little smaller. And I can zoom in, pinch and zoom on the iPad. It's really great when you're editing photos. I can get rid of this as well. Now, if I was doing this, you know, as a real edit, if you like, if this was going to be my final image, then I would spend a lot more time doing this to get my editing areas perfect. I'm not going to worry about it too much today. I'm just giving you the idea of what you can do. So just painting that in. I am using a mouse at the moment. You can with iPad and, well, with iPad Pro you can, and I believe with iPad now as well, you can use an Apple Pencil, which is really cool because, you know, you can get really close in to detail, be really precise with the areas that you're selecting and all that kind of thing. We've got a little bit here on the rocks. Oops, I'm still on the pen. So anything that's red is being affected. So the pen is going to put red in and the rubber's going to take it out. So just getting rid of those rocks. Cool. Okay. I just want to get, sorry, Just going to get this bit in here as well. All right, cool. That'll do for now. So now anything I do is going to be affected in the red area. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the exposure down. Okay, so you can see how that starts to bring things together. Just takes the eye. Now the eye is focusing much more on this area than it is this cloud area at the back. I might add some contrast, which just kind of darkens down things a little bit. Now you see here, all right, this is where I've been a little bit kind of overzealous, I suppose. You can see here that it's not really matching in. We can always grab our brush and brush things in so that it kind of matches a little bit nicer. And what we would do would be potentially increase our feather as well. And you just, you know, even though you've selected things initially, you might just need to kind of play around with it a little bit and keep going back to things just to make sure that things actually match together and you don't have any of these like harsh areas that really look odd. You know, this looks really odd here. So yeah, you just have to be kind of a little bit careful with the areas that you're actually selecting. So let's just bring this back. Okay, cool. I'm not going to worry about this too much. So yeah, so that's all of that. Am I happy with that sky? Might drop the highlights a little bit. Highlights of the white areas, boost the shadows, maybe a touch. Cool. Okay, yeah, that's fine for the sky edit. Now away from my mask again. The areas that I'm affecting are the whole scene. So what I actually want to do now is pretty much just work on this area. So I'm going to use another mask and I'm going to use a linear gradient this time. I'm going to bring that up. And what this is going to do is kind of blend these edges in this area together. So what do I want to do here? Well, I'm going to increase the exposure a little bit, bring out a little bit of detail in the darker areas, which is the shadows. I'm going to drop the highlights. Maybe boost the shadows a little bit more. I'm going to I'm going to decrease the whites a little bit in this area, and I'm going to crush my blacks. So I'm going to make my black a lot blacker, and that's going to add a load of contrast to the image. So now it looks a lot cleaner in here, got a lot more detail. I'm actually going to jump into the effects tab as well, and I'm going to just boost the clarity a little bit, so that brings out a lot of detail, because I really love the contrast between the smooth water, yeah, being blurred out over the rocks, and the rough harshness of this like volcanic rock. It's got all these jaggedy edges, it's really sharp. So I really love the contrast between those two things. And to help me bring that out, I'm going to use the clarity. Dehaze, maybe just a touch of dehaze. That's just going to kind of clean up the image a little bit. We had quite a lot of dehaze seem to be added in when we hit the auto feature. So now, like I said, you have to keep going back to things. So I'm going to find the brush edits that I made a second ago. I'm going to take that tree down. That's helped. Cool. All right. I want to make a little bit more of this area in here, I think. So I'm a big fan of the masking options. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a circle using the radial gradient. And I'm just going to do some dodge and burn. So I'm going to increase the exposure of this particular bit. It's quite nice. Back here as well. just this particular bit. I think I want to bring the detail out there a little bit. Yeah, that's quite nice. Back here. Just going to kind of bring that down a little bit. So I'm just drawing attention to particular areas of the image that I like. And I think another one actually back here. Cool. Okay, so that's our before. That's how we started off this particular image, and that's our after. As I said, it's a little bit messy. There's a bit of tidying up that I could do around here if I was really fussy, but I've actually edited this one already as a final image and posted it and used it as prints and things. So I'm not doing this as a final edit today. I'm just giving you the pointers, but I quite like that. I think that's pretty good. I love the clarity and the texture in these rocks. I think it's really cool, really easy image to capture, but quite a nice one. So that's the first one. That's our little black and white. Let's move on to this second one. This is an image I shot this year on a road trip up to the Lake District and Scotland. I was just driving along and I looked over to my left and we were driving through the Glencoe kind of area, and yeah, it was rainy and miserable, but you had this amazing mist on the mountains. So I found a park up spot and stopped and just had to capture this. I love this image. I use it quite a lot. I love the mist coming through the woodlands, and what I was really going for was a slow exposure. It's half a second. I wanted to kind of blur this water out and get a balance between the water and the mist, but none of the images really worked. I wasn't that enamored with them. So what I actually did with this was got rid of the water altogether and then just had the balance of the trees, the difference in the different trees and the mist, and I did that with the crop tool. And I think actually my final image of this one I did as a 1:1 square crop. Yeah, I did. So I just went 1:1, so that's a square crop, and I just got rid of the water altogether. And I prefer that. I think it just, brings your eye into the different woodlands and the different tones and everything in the image. So that was the first thing I did. Again, we could hit auto and see what that does. For me, auto, no, it doesn't work. Because what it does is it's cleaned up the image a little bit too much. So I want the mist, I want the haze and everything in this one. I do like the way that it brightens up these trees, but as we've learned, we can do that ourselves without sacrificing the rest of the image. So I'm going to use a radial gradient down the bottom here. And pretty much get it to stretch all the way over these trees. And I think I want to make them a little brighter. And I'm going to clean them up a little bit with a little bit of dehaze, because I want the haze to be the mist at the back here. So I want to make a bit more of these trees. So I'm just gonna quite a lot of dehaze. That's a bit too much. Okay, maybe a bit of clarity. That just adds a bit of contrast. So I really want the eye to kind of blend its way back, into this, which is almost nothing. So that's cool. That works quite well. I want to have a look to see what we can do up here. So I will use a linear gradient for this one. Oops. We'll just have a look to see. Let me drag this down. How much detail we can bring back behind this mist here. maybe a touch too much. A little bit back there, so you can kind of see the summit, but not quite. Do I like that? Let's just have a look. Before, after. Before, after. I think I do like that, but maybe it's a bit too kind of intruding. I just need it to be a little bit more subtle. Yeah, there we go. That's better. So all that's done is kind of brought out a little bit more detail back here. If this is a JPEG, I pretty much guarantee we wouldn't have been able to get that. It's pretty much lost. Yeah, I like that. Overall, maybe it's a little dark. Yeah, we'll just boost the exposure ever so slightly. We want more contrast in there. Yeah, touch of contrast. Why not? Just drop that highlights, boost the shadows a little bit. Pretty much always do that. Pretty much always drop my highlights, boost some shadows on any of my landscape work. The reason being, like I said previously, if you, as landscape photographers, what our camera can see is the shadow areas. So cameras only see light. Okay. Now, if you overexpose your image, the information in the brightest parts, so the whites and the brightest part of the image, you run the risk of losing them if you overexpose your image. If you underexpose them, you can pretty much always bring detail back in the shadows. Okay, but highlights, once they're blown out, there's no information there. To give you an idea of whether or not you are running that risk, you can look at your histogram. So if you look at your histogram, anything to the left is the dark areas and anything to the right is the highlight areas. And if you have a big peak on your right hand side, then you are running the risk of blowing out your highlights and you'll never get that information back. So if anything, exposed to the left of your histogram. If you want more information on that, you can hit me up and I will have a chat with you about it. So now I tend to put in a curve. This just helps to add a bit of contrast to the image. So I bring this one down here and this one up here and a little bit of adjustment in the middle as well. So it's almost a straight line, but this is editing highlights, shadows and midtones as well. So tend to utilize that. So I'm liking that at the moment. Before, this is our cropped before, and this is our after. It's subtle, but it's, you know, just bringing in a little bit of detail. Do I want to do anything with the color? Could have a look through our white balance. So this is white balance, and you know, this is how the camera shot it. We can have a look to see what kind of difference it will make if we go through the different white balances that we've got. So if it was daylight, that's how the image would look. If it was cloudy, this is all to do with temperature of light. It's cloudy. It was cloudy on that day. Do I like this? No, I think it's a little too warm. Shade is far too warm for my liking. Tungsten, fluorescent, obviously that doesn't work. So this is if you were shooting under these kind of light bulbs, tungsten or fluorescent light bulbs. It compensates for the blue hue of those. Apologies if you can hear the drilling from next door, they're doing some work. Flash, if we were using the camera's flash or a third-party flash, and then custom, you can build your own white balance profiles. We're not going to worry about that. It's a bit of an advanced technique. I am quite happy with how it shot it. I could potentially warm it up a touch. Go cooler, you get this weird blue hue. And I don't want that, but I might warm it up a little bit. I want a touch of magenta in there. And I've got to be careful because I don't want to put any color into the sky and into the clouds. The overall saturation, be really careful with saturation. You go too far, your photo looks really fake and ugly. So be really careful with saturation. And if you, likewise, if you went the other way, you can create your own black and white image because you take all the color out. So you can do that, don't do that. Let's have a look. Just a touch of saturation, I think. Yeah, Okay. Cool. Okay. Yeah, I think I like that. I'm not sure if I've gone too far with the clarity. What I do want to do is bring a vignette in. So just going to darken down the corners. You can go the other way, go white if you want, but it looks a bit weird. But a vignette down around, or I don't know, quite strong vignette, I think, on this one, something like that. There we go. So it just draws your eye into kind of the middle of the image a little bit more. But that's what we looked like before. That's what we look like after. As I said, it's one of my favorite images. We've got different trees, different woodland. We've got the lovely mist. We've got the mountain behind. Yeah, I really like that one. That's cool. And that's, I think, as far as I'm going to take it. I quite like it. Great. Okay. Let's have a quick look at this one. This is a JPEG that I shot years ago. And it has already kind of been edited up a little bit. So I just want to show you, if I jump into here and try to expose it, you know, you end up with all this grain and weird noise and everything in the image. That is not because it's a noisy image. It's because it's a JPEG and it's already lost a lot of the information. So I can do a little bit with it, but not much. Highlights, shadows, whites, crush the blacks, a little bit of tweaking. What I do want to do is make more of this. Like I said, the eye goes to the brightest part of the scene, and at the moment it focuses very much on this bulb, this light in the lighthouse. I'd like to illuminate the lighthouse a little bit more, so we're going to do that with a bit of dodge and burn. So we get a little brush. There we go, with quite a soft feather, 100% flow, and we're going to select, brush in the lighthouse. I'm careful, I'm not going to take the light bulb because we're going to make this brighter, and I don't want to make that light bulb any brighter. So I'm going to be a little bit careful about that. Cool. And then I'm just going to tidy that up using the eraser. Just tidy up that edge. Okay. Tidy up that edge, tidy up that edge. Getting picky now. Maybe tidy up that edge too. Ah, gone too far. Sometimes you have to go too far and then go back in order to get nice and neat. Okay. So now we're only editing that particular area. I'm going to bring the exposure up of the lighthouse a little bit. Now, because it's a JPEG, look how noisy it is. Yeah, it's got this weird grain. We don't have the information there to really take advantage of. So it's not quite working, you know, which is a shame because yeah, we kind of need to make a bit more of that lighthouse. Before it's a bit too dark, after a little bit lighter. Yeah, okay, kind of works, but not quite. Only other thing I'm going to do, because I don't want to spend too much time on this, because I really, you know, am highlighting the point that we don't have much in the way of editing to be able to do to a JPEG, is put a bit of a vignette on. Would actually, no, I don't want a linear, I want a radial. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to add another one in here. Bring that up, a bit more of that tree. Okay. Not even now. An advanced editing technique that I'm going to do to this in the future. I'm not going to go through it with you now because it's pretty full on. I'm going to replace this sky. Well, I'm going to add something into this sky. So the idea for this shot was to shoot this as it is and then shoot another one exposed for the Milky Way through the image here. I didn't get the chance to do that. I took this shot and then I had to leave Australia a few weeks later. So I didn't get a chance to revisit this spot and shoot the Milky Way. But I do have an image of the Milky Way, and what I'm going to do in an advanced video is I'm going to replace this sky with the Milky Way. So you'll end up with the Milky Way across the top half of the image here. Be quite striking. So yeah, so stay tuned with events if you want to see that done. Okay, cool. Let's move on. Let's have a look at this one, because a lot of you may have seen this image being used. This was shot at Crook's Peak in Somerset a few weeks ago at sunrise. Quite a nice image as it is out of camera, but I think we can make this pop a little bit more. So we could start off with auto straight away. It's just basically brightened things up. I don't like it. Again, I'm not going to use it, but I always give it a go, see what it does. It hasn't quite worked for me, this one. Now I am going to do some stuff with the sky. The sky had loads of color in it, but like I said, we need to kind of bring that back out because it's a raw image and we've exposed for this darker foreground area. So in the sky, we're going to drop the exposure a touch, add some contrast, drop some highlights, shadows, drop the whites. You can go to the color. We're going to increase the saturation. Now, again, don't go too far, looks weird. But we're just going to increase it a bit. We're going to warm it up, or we're going to cool it down. We could go either way. I'm going to warm it up because by warming it, I'm kind of blending it into this foreground as well. I'm just going to give it a touch of tint. There we go. So that's a little bit better. Now it has darkened down the top of this bush here. So while I am aware of that, I am going to grab a radial gradient. And I'm going to put it bang on there. And I'm going to increase the exposure. Of that bush. It's subtle, but it's necessary. Cool. Before, after. Before, after. Brilliant. Excuse me. Right, what else do we want to do here? I want to brighten up this background a little bit. So again, I'm going to do this with a brush this time. Larger brush. Put it in there. Bring my brush size down. Paint it in there. My rubber. Oh, grab my eraser. Get rid of the top line. Make it a little neater. And a little, hang on, a little bit on the brush here, isn't there? On the brush side. So just get rid of that as well. A little bit faster now. Oh. Okay, that'll do for now. Let's bring the exposure up a touch. Now, if we find it's funky, what do? We tidy it up. Now, the reason it's so obvious in the background there is because there's quite a lot of haze in the image. And once you hit the horizon, so where the sky is, once you get that, you get the bright hues from the sun. So it becomes a lot more obvious that there's a change between, and this is only, you know, this is during sunrise. So when you've got this strong light in the clouds here, you lose the haze in the mist over the land. Okay. Yeah, that's not quite worked here. I was trying to brighten up that rock a little bit, but not quite worked. Okay. Not sure what I prefer. Not sure if I prefer it going all the way up to the skyline or not. It's a bit too obvious. Yeah, not sure why I prefer that. We'll come back to it. Okay, cool. This section here, I want to add a bit of color, I think. So I'll bring the exposure down a touch. Oh, this is really bugging me. I don't like this. Might get rid of this brush altogether, you know. I'm not sure I like what it's done. We can just delete it. So this is our selection. What we can do is we can just delete it. Yeah, I think I'm just going to get rid of it. So it's worth trying, but I don't like it. So we'll just get rid of it. Cool. Okay, so this one, this linear gradient here, we're going to bring the exposure down a touch. Use the shadows. I definitely want to add, I'm going to add a bit of magenta to the whole image, but I definitely just want to darken down kind of the grass and that sort of thing and add a little bit of color into it. That's fine. Now I'm going to do a bit of dodge and burn on some of these rocks, bring back the now obviously I can't go all the way, it's going to look really funky, so I'm just going to be very subtle, just making them touch brighter than the grass and the shadows and that I've just dulled down. Maybe this one a little bit more, this one a little bit more. So this is called dodge and burn. You're basically brightening up some areas and keeping other areas dark. There you for a second. Come down here. A little bit more, get rid of this shadow maybe. Yeah, it's a bit better. Let's bring a little bit of detail out. Make it a little bit more bush. Oh, too much. Too much. Yeah. Before, after. I don't like this one. Don't like this one. So what we'll do is we'll do that again with a radial, I think. Go back to our radial. Okay. That's better. Keeping it a little bit, you know, a bit more true to original, true to how it seemed in the moment. Yeah, that's better. Okay, and then overall, I think we're going to warm it up a little bit and add a bit of magenta throughout the image. I like this kind of, this brighter bush, this little halo bit. I think that's quite nice. Cool. So before, after, before, after. Quite a change, that one. A little bit warmer, a little bit more magenta through it. I think that's better. Cool. All right. Let's have a look at this one. Very, very underexposed in the foreground here because we were capturing this sun with all the starburst. Now look how many artifacts there are in this image that we would need to get rid of. This is probably one that I wouldn't use because there's just, I mean, there's just too much in the way of spot removal. You're never going to get this perfect because of the blown out portion of the sun there. I probably wouldn't use that for a portfolio shot, but I just want to show you the healing tool again. So this time we're going to go heal and just check the size of my brush and paint out that and that and that and that. So we're just going around and selecting what needs to be removed, kind of tidy up the image. When you're shooting at f22, I think this was f22. Yeah, when you're shooting at f22, all your artifacts and dust particles and things like that will show up. So it's very, very common. Now this, like this, I'm just going to leave. I've got one there that I want to get rid of. Where is it? It's this one. Yeah. So I just want to show you, having shot this in RAW and exposed for the sun, if I now go into light and open up these shadows down here, boom, boom, look how much information has come back. That's where it was, because it's in RAW, boom, got all of this. And now we can also, because I don't want to increase all of the exposure, but we can also draw a gradient into here. All right, being careful of the sun flares. But if we go into here and open up the exposure, look what's happening. We're getting loads of information back. Tons of information. We can even open the shadows a bit more. That is quite an improvement. Yeah. Now, like I said, there's loads of lens flare and stuff. It's not the best shot image, but from where it was there to there, a heck of an improvement. Let's go back and do a little bit more healing if we can. Do this one again. It's quite a large area. All right, not too bad. I mean, this was shot in 16:9, quite light 16:9. I might just reframe it a touch, maybe bring that out. Maybe put the sun on a PowerPoint. So PowerPoint is the intersection point between vertical and horizontal line. Just trying to get rid of a little bit of that flare from there. I don't particularly like. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you put the horizon on your line and it doesn't quite make sense, you know? So you've got to know the rules and then you've got to know when to break them. So what's more important, having the sun on the PowerPoint or having the horizon on the third line? That's a rhetorical question. I'm being picky. Right, okay. I think that for me. Right, okay, cool. Now this area is still a bit too dark for me. So again, I'm going to use a brush, a slightly larger brush than I had before. Brush in here. Remember, any questions, pop them in the comments, pop them in the chat feature. I'll come to them in a second. I'll just do this one and I'll do the fireworks one, I think, because I'm sure people have got some images of fireworks they've taken recently that they would like to have a go at editing. Right, I'm a big fan of magenta at the moment, so I'm going to add some magenta. Ooh, far too much. Add some magenta through the scene, maybe warm it up a touch. I think I want magenta down just on this part of the rocks, so I can go into this selection. There we go. Warm that up a bit, that's pretty good. This bit down here I opened up. I think I want to just darken down this mound. So you can see how much my workflow is similar, you know. It's all about going through and picking out the details. What do I want to show? What do I not want to show? Bring that down just so it blends in with this exposure here. I prefer that. Another brush, smaller, just to pick out some of these rocks and some of the detail. I'm nearly done with this one, I think. Just want to, oops, just want to brighten them up a touch. It's better. Not this bit, just the rocks. Just the rocks. The rocks are interesting. The rocks add some contrast to the smoothness of the grass. And I'm just going to open up because the sun is, you know, hitting this rock face on this angle. I just want to make sure that I've kind of got the exposure a bit brighter here. Okay, not so much in the fields behind, but certainly in the rocks, in the rock face. Cool, okay. I could do more with it. Like I said, there's a lot of artifacts I could get rid of, but from where we were to where we are now. So before, after, quite like it. What I might do is just have a look to see what the sun would be like if I just tweaked its exposure a touch. Be really careful because it starts to look really kind of fake. You know, that looks awful. That looks far too blown out. If I just tweaked this a little, before, after, not too bad, not too bad. Yeah, cool. Anyway, from where we were to where we are now, I'm not sure I like that, what I've done to that sun there, but it's worth experimenting with anyway. And you can see how much, you know, we managed to do loads with this shadow area, we couldn't really do much with this sun at all. And that's because this is completely, you know, there's no information in the middle of the sun here. We've captured it nicely to get these rays, but there's no info here, so we can't really edit it that well. So that brush that I've just used, you know, it doesn't really add much to the image because it's highlight and there's no information there. Cool. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. The fireworks night recently, long exposure, so 30 seconds to capture this. So you know, quick bit of technique, long exposure, 30 seconds, it's captured the firework and it's complete trail from when it set off all the way up to when it exploded and left the trails in the sky. So really cool image. Kept the ISO low, shot it at f22 to get the maximum shutter speed that I could. So let's have a look. We auto, kind of. I mean, it's kind of where I want to take the image, but it's not really. It's not quite there. But the colors, I don't mind them. It's brought out this the trails here as well. All right, we'll go with it. This is the adjustments that it's made. So we could reset all of these if we wanted to, but I don't think it's necessary. I do want to make more of this house and maybe the crop as well. Am I a big fan of this crop? Don't know. I mean, if we crop it too much, we're going to lose this one. Yeah, we'll leave it as 4:3. All right, I want to make more of the house. I reckon we can pull some detail out of the house, make it a bit more obvious. How should we do that? Well, of course, it's going to be, let's try this select object. No, it's selected the firework. Of course it has. We don't want that. Let's go. Probably a little bit careful. Get stuff we don't want. Remember, any questions, pop them in the chat. I'm going to come to you in a couple of minutes. We're just going to finish this one up, and then I'm going to come to you with any questions that you might have. First thing is open the shadows on this one. There we go. There's that house starting to pop. Careful with the exposure. If we increase the exposure, we're going to get all grain. And that's because of the dynamic range of this camera. So although it is able to capture the shadow areas, you know, it's so dark that it hasn't been able to capture this house completely. But from where it was, that's a lot better. I want that in there. So so that's pretty good. So open those shadows right the way up. Try and make something of it. That's cool. Yeah, quite like that. I wonder what we've got in the foreground. Bring a linear gradient in here. We're just going to have a look to see what's there. Not much. Bushes and a wall and stuff. So we're not really going to benefit from bringing anything out of there. Obviously, the star of the show is the fireworks, so I'm not interested in that. Okay, cool. That's all for that. Let's make a little bit more of the colors, shall we? So fireworks, really make the colors pop. Definitely want vibrancy, definitely want some saturation. Cool, how are we looking? That's much better, isn't it? Much better. You know, they look good as they are shot. With a little bit of tweaking, you just get a little bit more out of them. And you're actually getting some trails coming in on these ones at the back as well. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, quite like that, I think. We could potentially make a bit more. The star of the show is this one, isn't it? So let's make a bit more of a fuss about it. And remember, your eye goes to the brightest part of the scene. So if we want people looking at this, we've got to make it brighter. Cool. I think I'm done with that. That looks pretty good. We've brought a bit of detail out in the house. We've made the colors pop a little bit more. You know, it certainly wasn't a flat image beforehand, but it's definitely an improvement. We've got some blues in there, contrasting with the reds. Yeah, I quite like that. I think that's pretty good. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna do for now. I'm gonna jump. Oops, I'm going to jump back into Zoom. For those of you that join me on YouTube, thank you very much. I'm going to stop things there for YouTube, and I'm going to. Well, actually, I better just check. There's no, there aren't any comments or anything. So let's just jump in to YouTube. Doesn't look like there are. Might make my sound go a bit funny. There, nope, we don't have any comments there, YouTube, so that's fine. And I'm going to jump into Zoom. I am going to stop the live broadcast. So if you have, if you're with me on Zoom and you want to ask any questions,